Okay. So this says that I'm live, and I'm just waiting for this to go live on Facebook. Okay, I think I'm live on both. So I'm live right now on both Facebook and on my YouTube. Okay. Wait, let me see. Okay. So the reason that I am doing this now, and I wanted to talk about this with you all, but I wanted to kind of sit back and think about some things before I came out with this. Um, but I wanted to expand upon the reason why I left the education system. And so, for those of you who know me or have been with me through my journey, you'll know that God became extremely real in my life in this past February. Now, I don't believe that that's when I got saved per se, because growing up in a born again Christian family. But I do, God was real in my life. But I want to tell you a little bit about what happened with me through my education and how this affected me later on in the education system as a teacher. Um, so let me just talk about college, my college experience for a little bit. So if anybody doesn't think or believe that it is extremely liberalized to the point where it does affect somebody's faith, especially if they're in this faith, then you are sadly mistaken. I wanted to just share a couple experiences that I had in college. For example, I went to a Catholic college. So, for those of you who know me, would know it was St. Francis College in Brooklyn, is where I attended. And it was supposed to be, it was a very liberal school. So you had to take all these different philosophy classes and things like that. And I'll never forget sitting in one of my philosophy classes. And I had a professor who, at the time, I was kind of struggling with my faith. And I asked, I had this booklet, and the booklet was talking about how you can take some things from science and how biblical fact actually coincided in some ways. And so I asked him, because I respected his opinion, to take a look at it. And I'll never forget him throwing the book back at me and saying, "This is trash," and to throw it out. That was kind of devastating to my faith. Like, there was no, somebody who I respected and looked up to. And so, me not being as strong in the faith, this kind of made me question some things. And then I remember another time being in class and just having it was like the common opinion. If I had an opinion, any opinion that was different, it was deemed as like hateful or bad or something like that. So that was kind of difficult going through college. And it really does start to change your thinking. So if you know somebody who is currently in college and maybe was raised in a Christian home or raised with Christ, and is kind of dealing with this situation, just continuously keep them in your prayers, because I can say that a lot of the stuff that happened to me throughout college, God definitely used for his glory now, where I can look at certain texts and things like that and kind of see where a lot of this stuff, a lot of this, my cat is like being weird, where I can kind of see how a lot of this stuff is used for me. So, uh, again, so I was really like struggling with the whole faith thing. And I remember it was my senior year and I had to do my thesis. And so I still had a ton of questions. And so I remember talking to one of my favorite professors at the time, who was actually a brother. And he was an English professor, as this was my degree. Hold on, let me let my cat in because she's going to knock down my door. And so I remember at the time asking him, well, with all of this stuff, right, all of this literature, how is it that you keep your faith? And his response to me was kind of just like, well, I don't let my faith interfere with this stuff. And so for me, that was such a, like, it kind of blew my mind, because I was like, well, how can you differentiate these two? Like, this one's clearly against what it says in the word, and what it says in the word is clearly against this. So, like, how does that work? And so, it was something that I was definitely struggling with. But I just remember, being in class and really feeling very, like, kind of like my thoughts and opinions changing or swaying, because the general class, like, and my professors kind of would seeming were supposed to be like neutral, but they kind of weren't, right? And so for anybody who doesn't believe that professors follow liberal theology, I can tell you that they absolutely do. And so what had happened like later on in after, so I graduated college, and at that point I was even worse off than I was to begin with when I first started. I really was very confused. And so I remember doing my thesis. And when I had to go do my thesis, I was in the honors program. So what they asked, what I could have done on anything I wanted. So instead of writing two different theses, I don't know the plural for thesis, thesi, wow. um, so instead of doing two different ones, I did one extended one. So it was my honors and my English together. And so I did it on the hero's journey. And what I had the opportunity to do was read different texts, and I was searching for a common truth throughout all those texts. I'm talking about like different time periods, and kind of looking for like just truth, like what is the truth. And so I found certain common themes throughout all of it, and that kind of like still confused me even more, right? And but it was sparking something inside of me, and so I would later find that God would use this in a mighty way later on. But I do want to talk about the education system, right? Like why I left and why I didn't want anything to do with it. And so I had graduated college, and I had got my first job working in a high school. And if you guys don't know, I'm not going to say the name of the high school, just for, I guess, professional reasons. But I ended up leaving for quite a few reasons, actually. The biggest reason, like number one, was because of the curriculum. So a lot of the current curriculum is actually geared towards not really molding the child, but there's two things. One, it's about standardized testing. It's all about testing. It's all that matters is the scores. So your children aren't really learning much or anything really useful or how to apply it. And there's no real way to help a child with their moral aptitude. So a lot of times, right, like you think about children today, a lot of them are very unruly, a lot of them are hard to deal with. And so you can't really teach a child in the proper way, right? To show them about morals and behavior and what is correct and what isn't. There's often a system that is followed, and this system is kind of repressive. It doesn't really help the child, but so much as it's like working for extrinsic rewards and things like that. And so there's no real change that happens inside. Everything is just working for something, if that makes sense, right? And so that was the hardest part for me. And so that, and then the curriculum, right? So there's STEM, a lot of STEM, or some we'll say STEAM, and it's science, technology, education, and they just added in the A for arts and mathematics. And so a lot of it is about logical thinking, and that's all that this is about, is thinking logically and whatever else. So there's not much empathy there. You can't really show kids like, right, like how to teach, like how to feel for one another, right? How to figure out like what is right and what's wrong. And by the way, you don't have one, Levite. I'm just responding to you because this is my other account, so that's why you don't have one. Anyway, so you can't really help mold that child. And so I'm a strong believer in the whole child, right? Teaching the whole child. They all have different paths and needs that need to come forward in order to best help them. And so I couldn't do what I wanted to do as a teacher. I couldn't physically help them. And so all that was the main concern was making sure that they performed in order to pass the exam. And when I say like the standards were brought way down, standards are brought way down. And, that's another problem, right? So I don't believe dumbing down children is ever going to help. I don't think that that's right. And so there is this concept in the curriculum about teaching children how to kind of like debate and things like that. So it's a lot about debating. It's a lot about talking and talking out points and things like that. But what's interesting is, even though that's what it claims to be, it's never that. It's basically, if a student says something, we can't really say, no, it's wrong. We had to say, yeah, that's right. Or, like kind of fish for like, what the truth is in it. And I'm sorry, but 14, 15, 16-year-olds, they're not always correct. So let's just be honest. They need guidance. They need somebody to be there in order to show them the way, to show them truth. At that age, even medically and scientifically, right? Not your prefrontal cortex, I'm sorry, your frontal lobes are not even fully developed yet. You don't do well in decision making. And here's another reason. When I was in Brooklyn College, a lot of what for my master's degree in education, a lot of what they taught, there were two things that really just made me say, like, enough is enough with this system. The first thing was about the transgender thing. And now, before you click away or say, oh, like this is hate speech, no, I'm not comfortable asking a child who, in my opinion, still can't make their own clear own decisions, right? Because their brain is physically not mature enough to do so. But I'm not comfortable asking a child what their gender pronoun is. And so I'm going to just be honest. And if you people want to hate me for that, that's okay. This is my decision, right? I'm not comfortable doing that when science, even the science used against it, says that they can't even make that decision yet because their brains are not developed enough. So, it's kind of like a throw up here, right? And now another thing was in terms of curriculum, the certain books that had to be taught. So I remember the first year that I was teaching, I had to teach the Handmaid's Tale. And The Handmaid's Tale is this disgusting book, which a lot of people think is so wonderful, which is now a show on HBO, which takes Christianity and completely mars the truth about it. It's about this place called Gilead, and it's like if it was a Christian theocracy, what the world would be like. And what they do is follow Old Testament Mosaic law, which, to be honest with you, even Jesus spoke again, saying like this isn't the law that he came to teach. It's not the same thing. Okay. There's a difference between Mosaic law and Torah. There's like, anyway, but the point is that it was about women having this right to their body, and that if they were a Christian, that they would be slaves, and this and that. And I don't understand how it's okay to teach something like that, but if I'm not comfortable with teaching those kind of texts. And so if that's not what the liberal mindset is for that classroom, that's what I had to teach. I didn't really have too much of a say in that matter. And so that was a big thing for me, right? A lot of the texts that are being taught as well push this same kind of ideology. And so anything that has any form of moral truth to it, or moral any form of moral aptitude, is wrong. Like it doesn't work, right? You can't do it. And so that is a huge reason, like I said, why I left the education system. And I remember sitting in one of my graduate classes right before I dropped the classes, and we were reading a text from, I think it was Sherman Alexie, and he was, I believe he grew up on like a native reservation. And what they did was they took this woman who was, he said that this was like his teacher on the reservation, and she was, I think, Catholic or something like that, and how she used to, like, they were pushing her God onto them and things like that. And for me, that, like I said, that's not a representation of what my faith is and what I follow. And so you kind of get into this mindset that like the general populace is going this one direction, especially in New York City, the New York City education system. It's not even about tolerance, because if you have an opinion that is not liberalized, you are shut down and you are basically told to like you're attacked by your entire class. I watched it happen to one of my classmates, which unfortunately I wish I could contact him now, because at that time, being how I was kind of like on that gravy train, right? And so and then when things changed, when my eyes were open to a lot of things, I was like, wow, like, and I felt really bad about it. But it's a huge reason why I left the education system. Kids aren't really learning the things that they're supposed to be learning. It's kind of just like teachers are so exhausted because they have to deal with children whose parents aren't parenting. A lot of parents are exhausted because they have to work how many jobs and things like that. And so you can't even physically be a teacher. You can't even physically, help that student the way that you want to, which is very unfortunate, or else there comes other issues. So, like I said, I just really wanted to explain to you why, what's up with the curriculum. It's not about teaching anything. There's no, moral there's no moral truths anymore. It's just kind of like, well, kids are kids, they're going to do whatever they want, and we have to nurture that thing, and like including like bad behavior and things like that. And so it's not teaching, right? It's kind of like being a paid babysitter to teach a curriculum that is completely against, the Christian faith, and in a lot of ways. So I just wanted to like explain that, right? And let you know that, from my college experience, how much of things just totally um, hurt my faith in a lot of ways. There was so much that I was confused about at the time. There's so much I wanted to know, and I had a lot of questions, and my professors weren't very helpful with that either. So, like I said, it's a big reason why I left the education system. And now this isn't to say, what I would really, really hope is that people eventually, you know, um, can, I guess, learn truth, right? Because there are a lot of lies, unfortunately, like including in our history. Like our history books don't even tell you the truth about history. There's just so much, and it's really unfortunate. But and you'll learn, when you from high school to college, how many lies you've learned, and then from college into the real world, how many more lies you've learned, until you're so indoctrinated that you don't even know what to believe or what is truth. And so I can tell you that the truth is in the word of God, and that's pretty much it. But I mean, it was definitely very interesting, and they've been pushing this for a long time. I definitely agree with Carol, who's writing on YouTube here in the chat, saying about pushing atheism and things like that. And it's very true. I am a result of that. And I'm just speaking my truth about what happened in my situation, and a big reason why I did leave the education system. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't teachers that are doing their best, that are trying, but I can guarantee you there are teachers who feel the way I feel in a lot of ways, right? Maybe follow Jesus, or have this faith, and are seeing that they're being forced to teach certain things, or to kind of like enforce certain things that they don't agree with, they're not okay with. And it's either that or your job, right? So you really don't have too much of a choice. And if kids say something and it's not true, or it's, um, we don't cultivate that idea of conversation or debate, you can't really correct a child. There's no such thing. You're not allowed to say that that child is incorrect. You have to say something like, well, you're on the right track, or, well, oh, not quite there, but you got the idea. No, the kid's completely wrong. And in the way, and the, like, oh, it's just very unfortunate. But I just wanted to share this with you because I thought that this would be um, helpful in understanding why I left the education system personally, what some of the texts that your students are reading. I mean, especially in their English classes, you should, when their kids come home, if you're a Christian and you're in the faith, I would definitely see what your kids reading English wise. There's no topic that's off limits. You talk with 15 and 16-year-olds about all kinds of things, about homosexuality. You can talk to them about all kinds of things. But if you ever brought up the name of Jesus, yeah, that would never fly. But that's, like I said, a big reason why I left the education system, and I just wanted to share that with you now. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's the story. That's a big reason. But it's out there now, so you guys can feel free to do with this what you will. And I just wanted to share that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, brothers and sisters, and those who are not in the faith. Just like I said, make sure you're looking at what your kids are reading, and what they're learning, and how they're being taught. Because there are texts that have merit to them, but a lot of them have a lot of underlying messages that you probably would not be okay with your students reading, or knowing, or having a conversation with where it's not really a guided conversation. We're not allowed to guide or lead or bait or anything like that. So, um, yeah, just wanted to share that with you. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and shalom and God bless you all.